Hello, everyone, and welcome to another YES talk from the North Suburban YMCA here in Northbrook, Illinois. Welcome. Today we Pam Rakansky, facilitator for the YES program, our YMCA Education Series program here at the Northbrook YMCA. It's my pleasure to welcome today Irene Lowe. Irene will be talking about Simply Organized. How do we organize? Professional organizing. Life can be so stressful and chaotic with everything coming at you at once. Balancing your professional and family life while managing your home is a lot to take on. When clutter takes over, your home becomes another chaotic aspect of your life instead of a place of peace until the storm is over. So we are welcoming today Irene Lowe to talk to us about how to declutter and reorganize our households and lives. Thank you, Irene.
Oh, thank you for the great introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Irene Lowe, and I'm the owner of Simply Organized. And thank you so much for taking up the day to listen to this message about organizing and decluttering. I just want to share a little bit of some of the comics that I think we could understand. Here it says with SpongeBob, why don't we move all the clutter from this room and put it in the other room? How many of us can relate to this, right? And here's another one. Fighting clutter is like fighting weeds. So weeds constantly appear, and sometimes clutter is that way as well. So I strongly believe that we need a daily refuge from clutter, noise, and the blaring messages that wait on our doorsteps. So we need a place, especially our homes, to have peace and find respite. And we will definitely talk about that today. So organizing is wellness. Mental and physical care gives you wellness. And so being organized helps us mentally as well as physically. And by the way, I would love for this time that we have together to be interactive. If you have any questions, I would love for you to ask them by unmuting the button. If you want to ask me later, and if you just want to type in a question in the chat, that would be great too. I just hope that you would get a lot out of this presentation. And as an educator of 23 plus years before my job as an owner of Simply Organized, I know that the more people are involved, the more it's interactive, the more you'll get out of it. Okay, so this next slide I want to show you, we are in a crisis of stuff. So the volume of self-storage units in the country could fill the Hoover Dam 26 times. That's pretty amazing. The self-storage industry is definitely growing. I see it pop up all over the place on the North Shore. And it's worth over $30 billion. And I would say about 10% of the Americans pay $1,000 a year on storage. So how many of you can relate to this? The storage unit may be in your house. It could be in the garages, basements, and spare rooms. So how many of you can admit that they have a storage unit in their house? It's not necessarily in a closet, but it could be a whole room. Yeah, we all do, right? So there is also a study from UCLA, and Dr. Oakes says the American workplace is intense and demanding, and when we come home, we want material rewards. Our needs to reward ourselves materially may actually increase our stress. So personally for me, when I come home stressed, and if I work really hard, I actually reward myself with food. But a lot of Americans, they reward themselves materially by going shopping or by going on Amazon and get a quick fix on buying something that they feel like they need. And it's just to somewhat in short term to rewarding themselves and feeling a bit, finding a little respite. Now, why do you think Dr. Oakes said that it actually increases our stress? Well, we'll find out later. I'll give you a hint. It could be in your house right now. And when you see it, think about how it makes you feel. So I love this comic. It says that one day, son, all this will be yours. Who do you think is speaking here? So I certainly don't want to inherit that. And I wouldn't want to give that to my children as well, because that looks pretty daunting and stressful. So organizing, and I want to encourage you, is doable no matter where you're starting, really. And I'm going to talk to you about today how you can make organizing and decluttering easier for you and less stressful. So here's some pictures that I want to show you. On the left is a before picture of a basement. And then after the decluttering and organizing, that is the picture of after. So they have a lot more space. Things are contained in containers and labeled, and they can find whatever they need in those bins. And everything in the bins are consolidated with like items. And actually in the bins are all holiday decorations. This is a craft room. That little picture on the left are materials and things that this client has purchased, and it just became a dumping ground of excess things and her craft supplies. And she was really sad to see that she really couldn't use her craft room anymore. And she has lots of great talents. She sews, she quilts, she uses a lot of Cricut, she makes stationery, she stamps, she scrapbooks. She loves to do it with her kids and her friends and families. So after decluttering, as well as organizing, not only do we have one table, but now we have two tables. The one on the left is the sewing table that we were finally able to bring it out and use. And then the other table is for crafting. And right now she has it laid out with her Cricut machine. And all the bins that you see behind the tables are all her supplies, and that she can easily get access to. So I do hear you. I do understand how it could be really daunting to think about decluttering, organizing your house. So if you've struggled with clutter and disorganization for years and feel overwhelmed or don't know where to start, some of you may be thinking like that. Some of you may have emotions when you feel about your spaces. You may feel overwhelmed, frustrated, anxious, mad, annoyed, and angry, perhaps at yourself, at a family member, or even a past relative who have given you a lot of things that you really didn't want. You've also tried to get organized before and start strong, and then you start fizzle out fast and get organized, but you can't maintain it, and then your space goes back to being messy. These are some of the things that I commonly hear, and these are some of the things that we will talk about and address. So they are terrible twos in the organizing world. And there are two big mistakes. The first mistake is buying a ton of bins and organizational supplies, thinking that will make us more organized. Basically, you're putting more stuff into more stuff. A lot of people make mistakes by going to Target or to the Container Store, and they buy bins thinking that they're going to be more organized. Well, it's the actual the step is actually the opposite. You first want to look at your space. You want to see the things that you want organized after decluttering. Sometimes you'll have to take measurements. You'll have to plan out your space and see what makes sense. What do you want at eye level? What do you want at the highest, on the highest shelf? What do you want on the bottom? And then that really determines the bins that you're going to buy. So I kind of use this analogy like, oh, you're going to buy all the ingredients in baking a cake. And then you go home with all your ingredients, and then you look at the recipe book, and then you realize you don't have all the ingredients that you really need. It's kind of like that when you are purchasing things first before really realizing what you need. So also, I want you to remember that social media is a lie. Realistically, this picture you see here is not, it looks pretty, but it's not realistic. So sometimes you don't want your raspberry jam to be organized with your red ketchup, right? And sometimes you don't want to organize all your books by colors. It doesn't really make sense, because if you're really trying to find a title of a book, but you have to remember the color of the binder, right? And that doesn't really make sense. So don't look at social media and think, oh, that's what I want and that's how I'm going to organize it. Realistically, that is not going to work. It looks pretty, but then at the end of the day, that is going to be all a mess. Okay, so you want things to look great, but the Container Store or Target or wherever you go to get your supplies comes last. Here's mistake number 2. I have to keep all these things in case I need them someday. They might come in handy. So there are actually 4 swear words in the organizing world. It's might, could, maybe, and someday. So if you're brave enough, I would love to hear someone to use these 4 words in one sentence. And why do you think these are swear words in organizing? Does anyone want to give it a try? Well, let's see if you can at the end of the presentation. So, how do we make the magic happen? There are 4 steps. And it may seem easy right now to just, yeah, sure, it makes sense. We're going to prioritize, we're going to categorize, we're going to downsize and reorganize. Well, there's more to it than that, but I promise you, you can do this. So what does it mean to prioritize? It means to think about what is the most pressing thing in your house that needs to get organized. If you could wave a wand and fix one thing magically, what would it be? I want you to think about your priority. There's a reason why you're listening to this, because you may have new goals. You may think like, okay, you know what? I want a certain space organized, or I'm tired of seeing the stuff that I have. So you have to think about your new goal. So the pressing thing is to get your house organized, right? So let's take it in smaller chunks and really keep in mind of the new goals you have. Some of the new goals that you have are the following. Winter's coming and we can't park our cars in the garage. Or there's unopened mail on every surface of my office and I don't know where my passport is. I can't find that perfect dress. I have it in my closet and I don't want to buy another one if you're going to a special event. So if you're finding these ideas, so in your mind right now, these may become your priorities. So you need to designate a regular time and put it on your calendar and prioritize one space at a time and focus on one category. Why can't you have a task such as decluttering or organizing on the calendar? It's okay if you just want to do it once a week or once a month or one time during the day. What I like to do is to do it right before I go to bed or right after dinner. If we're putting the dishes away and we're washing the dishes, then I will work one room at a time or one drawer at a time. It depends on where you're at. So not only prioritizing time and your goals and your spaces, it's also important to categorize. It is the key to organizing. So categorizing allows you to know what you have, how much you have. It reduces you being overwhelmed, and then it also helps you know exactly what you need to do. So I love this part of organizing because when you, let's say, want to organize your kitchen drawer with all your cooking your kitchen utensils and you have them kind of all over the place, well, if you gather them all together and you see them, you'll realize you have double of the same tools, or you'll see three things can function as one tool. Let's take another example. Let's say you want to organize your books and you know that you really need to purge a lot of your books because you've read many of them and you don't have room in your bookshelves anymore. So you would consolidate all your books. That means gathering books from the basement, gathering books from your bedrooms or your kids' rooms or the garage, anywhere you have books, and you put them all together wherever you have the most books at, and you realize that you have 2 or more titles, or you'll also see that there are books that you'll never read or that you're not interested anymore. You'll also realize how much of the books you've already read and that you don't need to keep them. So when you have them all together and consolidate them, it really makes you look at how much that you have when sometimes you don't realize you have that much. So when you categorize, it also means to create subcategories and subcategories. Here's an example. Let's look at clothes. So when we look at a closet, we have work clothes or we have scrubs, right? Depends on what you do. We have athleisure clothes, we have athletic clothes, and then we have coats, shoes, and accessories. It's important to categorize all that because they, so you could see them all together and see how much you have. For example, if you put your clothes together, you may not realize how many black pairs of pants that you have, or you don't realize how much shoes you have unless you consolidate all like things and put them together. Let me give you another example. So we had talked about athleisure, so that's after our workwear from the last list that you saw on my slide. So if we subcategorize it, we also have leggings, sweatshirts, tanks, t-shirts, and shorts. Think about how if you're going to consolidate all the leggings, well, first you would consolidate all the athleisure clothes, then categorize and consolidate all your leggings, all your sweatshirts, all your tanks, t-shirts, and shorts. Do you see how you're going to see how much you have of everything? So categorizing also helps us break down the projects into smaller projects, and then it makes it much manageable. And it's actually for our brain to process and make decisions easier. if you're just going to go in and say, okay, I'm going to organize my closet, that could be a very big project. But if you break it down into small categories, just like what we had talked about, and creating subcategories or subcategories, and if it's really overwhelming, you just tackle one category at a time. And so when you schedule your calendar to organize or declutter, you can break it down so small where you can say, all right, I'm just going to organize my tank tops. All right, I'm just going to, organize my leggings. Or if you are really motivated, then you can just organize your athleisure wear. And I love this little caption here. It's when you're decluttering and get distracted by all the cool stuff you find. So this woman here, she's distracted by this old mask that she had, and then she's looking at old pictures, and she's sending pictures of herself to her friends with the mask on. So if you can just carve out, just give yourself, let's say 2 hours or 1 hour without any interruptions, you can get a lot done. Speaking of being distracted, one of the tips that I want to give you, and this is what I call, it's called a time sucker. When you're decluttering and you're organizing, you're creating a pile of things, right? And you're consolidate all like things, and then you'll have a pile of things that don't belong where it should be. And that, this needs to go in the kitchen, not here in my bedroom, or this goes in my kid's bedroom and it doesn't need to be in the kitchen. So things that you have that need to go elsewhere in the house and not in the room where you're organizing, it doesn't belong in the space that you're at, do not leave the workplace that you're organizing, because then that'll take 10 minutes for you to go to that room and put that there. Oh, and then you're distracted by you seeing something else. Try to just keep that pile somewhere else in the room that you're working at, and you do that at the very end so that you're not running around the house putting things back while you're trying to organize. Do that at the end so that you're saving the time to just focus. And what I find is people, when they declutter and organize, 3 hours is a good time period to organize and declutter. After 3 hours, people usually get tired mentally because there's a lot of decision making. So 3 hours is a good time period to just focus on decluttering and organizing. So the next step is downsize. So you have all your things consolidated and you realize you don't have much space. You have too much stuff. Well, that means you need less stuff. So some of the questions that you want to ask yourself while you know that you need to purge is asking yourself, when was the last time you used this? Usually I like to give people 2 to 3 years. Like if you have not used it in the last 2 years, you need to ask yourself, why do you still have it? Or 3 years, depending on what the item is. So did you use words like, I might wear it, or I might use it? Could it be useful one day? Or maybe someday I'll go back to that hobby, or whatever it is. How many of these items or similar items do you have? How many do you really need? Do you really need 4 colors of the same shirt? Or do you really need 4 tools that kind of does the same thing? Are you keeping this out of a sense of guilt, shame, or another emotion? This is really hard for a lot of people because if someone special had gifted them something and they feel bad giving it away or donating it, that is a sense of guilt if they feel like they should I guess, give it away. There might be something that you want to keep because it reminds you of someone special who had passed on. That's another strong emotion that prevents you from giving it away. So with that, I want to talk to you about donations. So when we donate at Simply Organized, we only donate to nonprofit organizations. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations in the area that supports a lot of charitable, amazing organizations. One example is the YMCA Women's Store on Central Avenue in Wilmette. It's a thrift store for women, and all the proceeds go toward women who are displaced or who need extra help or who are going back to work. There's also Wings. Wings is an organization that have thrift stores throughout the Chicagoland area. The closest one to Northbrook is the one in Niles on Milwaukee Road. And all their proceeds from their thrift store supports battered women as well as families who need shelter and who needs to fill their new spaces, their living space. And other organizations such as the Winnetka Thrift Shop on Green Bay Road, all their proceeds support the adolescents' mental health. Their counseling center is behind the thrift store, as well as the North Shore Senior Center. If you go to the North Shore Senior Center, they have a thrift store in the center. And last year they made $70,000 only from the thrift store, which is pretty amazing. And then all those proceeds go back to the center in supporting other seniors around the area, as far north as North Chicago, as far south as North Chicago, and as far west as I think Rolling Meadows are farther out there. So anyway, if you can think about how many people will benefit from the things that you donate. Also, you can give your things to friends or families or your nieces or nephews. They may want to move out one day and they're trying to furnish an apartment. And you know, let's admit it, sometimes we do re-gift things. So if you think about the person who gave you something, they don't want to burden you by making you feel shameful or guilt if you feel you can't give it away. And sometimes a lot of people just want permission to donate. So, and I'm giving you that permission. So if you're feeling guilt because you spent a lot of money on it, or the tags are still on it, or your sister gave it to you and you don't want to be wasteful, or you feel like you can't throw it away in the garbage, I just want to encourage you not to feel guilty. It is actually going to prevent you from continuing to purge and to organize, and preventing you from finding peace and respite in your house. And if you spent the money, well, it's already spent, right? You have to move on. There's still tags on it. You can re-gift it. Or if someone finds it at a thrift store, they would be very happy to know that it was brand new. And we had talked about people gifting you things, and you're not being wasteful if you're donating, and you can't throw it away in the garbage. Believe it or not, when we go to clients' houses, we don't have a lot of things to throw away. I would say 95% of the things that we haul away are donations. So you also need to be mindful that there are things that can have a great second life. For example, this little picture says, it's a card, and Tara wrote, "Thank you for the walker. It will be so nice for my mom when she comes to visit." So that walker was donated, and she picked it up from a neighbor, or a neighbor gave it to her, and she was so thankful to have an extra one, or one that she could keep in her house when her mom comes. You just never know how useful it could be for someone else. Oh, I have it already. I went through that already. So after, when you declutter or downsize, then it's time to reorganize. So the first rule is there's really no rules. And I encourage you to think outside the box. An excuse is, well, this has always been here. It doesn't have to be. It can go somewhere else. This is a living room. I can't make it into an office. So what I'm trying to tell you is that you could think outside of the box. Personally, for me, 2 summers ago, we renovated our first floor, and we realized that we don't really use our dining room except once or twice a year. And so we converted our dining room into my office. And so I'm sitting in this amazing room that used to be a dining room, and it's an office, and it is put to use almost every single day. And so that's thinking outside of the box. It doesn't have to be a dining room. Another great idea is a china cabinet. So to be honest with you, a lot of people are getting rid of their china cabinet because people don't really use their china, or they don't have china, or they're not really putting it to good use. So another way to use a china cabinet is to store your books in there, to use it as a bookshelf. And if you don't like the windows of your china cabinet because it shows all your things inside, you can always put nice paper to hide the glass, and or decoupage, or if you're crafty, you can paint the window. Anyway, it's important to think outside the box. Just because it's a shoebox, or just because it was something, you can repurpose it and add a few things, and it could be totally, it could be something totally different. So reorganize, keep like things together, give them boundaries, and establish a home. What I mean by giving them boundaries is to, this is where you then can go out to the Container Store and buy your bins, because then you realize how much you have of something that you want to keep after you're decluttering, and you would buy the right size container. Do you want a container that's a drawer? Do you want a container with the lid? Do you want a container that doesn't have a lid? Do you want a container that is opaque, meaning you can't see through it? Or do you want a container that you can see through it? Where are you going to put the container? Is it going to be inside a cabinet where no one can see it? Is it going to be out on a shelf? Do you see how it's really important to know what you have first, how much you have after the hard work of purging, and then what you have left, thinking outside the box. Now think, where do I want it? Obviously, if it's out in the open, like on your bookshelf, you want a nice basket. If you want things hidden, let's say with craft supplies, it could be in a clear bin and put it inside a cabinet where you don't see it. But if you open it, you know exactly what's inside of it because it's clear. Do you want drawers? The best time to use drawers are when it's on the very bottom shelf, so that you could pull it out and see everything in it. Another place where you want to use drawers are when you have really deep shelves, so that you don't have to, move everything to see what's in. Oops, sorry. So you don't see what's way back in the shelf. Another time when you want to use drawers are when you have a lot of things that can fall over. A good example are water bottles. If you have it stored in your kitchen cabinet standing up, how many times does it fall over when you want to grab something? So that would be a great drawer, a kitchen drawer, or a bin. Just store it all in a bin. Another reason why you want to establish a home and then labeling it is that then you can keep yourself accountable as well as everyone else in the family accountable, so that they know where to put things back. So here are some pictures of things being organized. The one on the left, it has homes. It is being contained. And if it overflows, let's say the pens and pencils overflows to other parts of the box, then that means that you have too much, and then it's time to purge or put it somewhere else in the house where you need the pens, not just to throw it somewhere else. But if you have too much, donate it. And then do you see the clips of receipts? Well, if it goes over, well, then, then it's time to go through those receipts, either look at it, toss it, or file it away. On the right is a closet of the mudroom. On the other side, she had shoes and a coat closet, but they did not have much storage. So they used the mudroom as storage. So here we had one shelf of just small appliances. The bottom two shelves were cleaning supplies with the bins and etc. So the reasons why we put some of the cleaning supplies in the bins, because then she knows that all her cleaning supplies are there, but also she's able to easily look in the bins and say, oh, I already have, let's say, a Windex, and she does not need to go out and buy more. Having a home and keeping all like things together will then make you quickly decide whether you need more or not, and also prevents you from overbuying. So remember, keep prime real estate for important things. If you use something once a year, think about whether you really want that space to be used for something you only use for once a year. It shouldn't be in drawers with everyday things, for example, or in an everyday shelf. Let's say you use a roasting pan and you only use it on Thanksgiving. It should be put away, like somewhere that you don't see it every day. So things that are important and used most of the time should be stored somewhere where you could see it most often. Here I see crab leg crackers. Well, how often do we eat crabs or lobster legs? Is it something that you can really use? Those are some of the things that you can think about. Another thing about thinking outside the box, for a crab leg cracker, you can use it as a nutcracker too, right? Not just lobster or crab or crabs. So these are the steps: prioritizing, categorizing, downsizing, and reorganizing. And if you can take one thing away today, I want you to know that you can do this. Break things down like we had talked about, work with one space, or work with one category, or work on one subcategory of a subcategory of a category. what I mean is you can break this down and make it much more manageable. Your final advice, the don'ts. Do not be hard on yourself. Do not keep things out of guilt or that you might use it one day. Now, let me talk about this. So I had a client who is just starting a new chapter in her life. And one of her goals is for her to lose weight, and she's working really hard on it. And she had a lot of, well, I might wear that one day, or it doesn't fit now, but I might wear it, I might wear it, I might wear it. And her closet was filled with clothes, and she knew she had to purge. And so I asked her, I said, well, I know you're going to get to your goal because you're very dedicated in losing weight. How will you feel? You're starting a new chapter in your life. And how are you going to feel when you reach your goal? She's going to feel great. She's going to feel so proud of herself. Well, wouldn't she want to reward herself? So why do you want to keep some of the old clothes that you've had for the last 10 years, that doesn't fit now, but I know that when she reaches her goal, she'll want to reward herself with, a couple new pieces. And also think about how you might use a kitchen appliance or something electronics. The technology world is changing so fast. And by the time that you want to use something, which is probably 4 or 5, or let's say 3 or 2 years later, the technology changes. Now that when technology changes, it's actually better, it's more savvy, it's smaller, and it's faster, it's smarter. So think about those things when you're thinking about quote unquote might thoughts. Do not start with photographs or sentimental items. Those are the most difficult items, and it takes the longest time to organize and declutter those. Do not be fear of letting go. This is where you break into that song. Do not fear the trash can, and do not think that you have to be perfect. So the moment you start tidying is the moment when you restart or reset your life. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope you found it very helpful and encouraging. I just want to let you know that I know most of you feel very anxious, or you have excuses, and I make excuses all the time, not saying that you're making things up, but you're busy, or you're tired, or it's so overwhelming, or I can't do it alone. Find out what is the reason that is preventing you from organizing, and just start small and keep a schedule. Keep it up once a week, twice a week, an hour a day. Don't organize more than 3 hours unless you had a ton of coffee and you're like the Energizer bunny, but you will wear yourself out if you spend more than 3 hours. Sorry, my laptop keeps sliding. So that's about it. I would love to take any questions. If you just want to chat me or type out the questions, I'd be happy to do that too. I'm going to, I guess, stop sharing, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Irene. That was awesome. I know when I moved from Seattle out to Chicago during COVID, and I had about 12 years of living in one place. And so it was very daunting, but I just did it one thing at a time. And now I'm super glad everything's organized in my new place. So
yeah, and it's everything that you want.
Yes.
Right. And you know exactly where everything is.
Yeah.
But I love one of the advantage, or how much time do I have, Pam?
We have 10 minutes until we have to.
Okay. I just want to encourage you, because one of the benefits of being organized is that you can tidy up really quickly. it doesn't take that long to tidy up, putting things where they should be. I love that because I love having friends and family over. I love it when they stop by anytime they want. I want my house to be a welcoming place for everybody where they can come at any time, or I can say, well, what are you doing today? Come on over for coffee. And then it won't be stressful for me because all I know is that I just need to tidy up a little bit. Doesn't take too long because I have my spaces organized and I keep it up, remember the schedule once a week, one time a day, which for me, it's right before I go to bed. It doesn't take that long and it's not stressful because I've kept it up. And the things that we don't want, the things that makes us stressful is what prevents us from being organized. So I just love the fact that I have my living space, with the things that I love and I want and is useful, and I will take care of them and I want to give them a home. And I know that I won't overbuy things because I know how much I have. And so my goal to have my house a welcoming house, a peaceful house, is to start by having just the things that you need and it makes you happy, and keeping it organized, creating boundaries, creating a home. Does that make sense? Does anybody want to share stories? I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Hi, I got a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Sammy.
Hi. Thanks for all the great advice. I have a home business at home,
Mhm.
and there's like a lot of paperwork and stuff like that. A lot of the papers are on the desk and also on the dining table, but they seem to add up, and then it starts looking like a mess. And it gets a little overwhelming to clean it up after a while. So you have any tips on how to keep a clean desk, home office, and don't let the papers and bills and other things.
Absolutely. And
okay.
Sammy, thank you for bringing that up. This is a tough one. I'll admit that, but I'll tell you briefly how you can approach it. It's the same thing as categorizing and subcategorizing, right? So I'm assuming that you have piles of papers. So I would go through, again, taking it in chunks, making a lot of piles. So it gets messy before you get organized. Okay. It gets really messy, and that's okay. You have a light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to go there, but you just need to start, right? So I would categorize all the different piles, have it throughout on your floor, then take your Post-it notes and create and give a title or name the category of the piles. Then this is where you could do it, on a regular basis, or schedule yourself. Take one category and decide what to shred and what to keep. Do that for all your piles. I would also download either on Susie Orr's website. It's all over the place. What to keep, like your taxes. Taxes, I think you keep the last 7 years. Think about how much you can digitize, how much you could do online baking. All your statements are online. A lot of things are online, our medical records, all that. Think about how comfortable you are to let go of the papers and go online, create a user and password. So anyway, go through one category at a time, and then continue with all your other piles. Then you're going to then look at all your piles with the papers you want to keep, then create the files for each of those categories. Some of the piles, that the papers that you want to keep, will have then sub files. Do you see how that you can kind of translate the things that I talked about? I know I talked a lot about things, but you could then see it with your papers. And then with the mail and every single paper that comes into your house, that's another topic. In a nutshell, create a mail center in your house. In your mail center, you have a drop zone. It could be a basket, it could be a box, it could be just a little table, all the mail, all the papers, put it on that table. Make sure you have a garbage can right next to that table. Throw the thing, the junk mail, the junk paper that you don't need right away. Open up your mail right away. Throw away the things that you don't want within the envelope. Just keep, usually when I have a bank statement, I keep the top page. Or just throw away the papers that you don't need. And then that does take on a regular basis to go through that. Once you have your filing system in place, then you'll know with that paper or the mails that come in, you'll know how to file it. Also, see, it's a whole nother topic. And then another filing system you have on your desk are immediate papers that you need to file away. What I have is a to-do file, a discuss file, an awaiting file. That means, oh, I filled this out. I want to see if I get that check back. Or, you know, I had an action item, I completed it, but there's something that's supposed to come back to me, right? So I put that in a waiting file.